Okay, everybody, we are here for the second part of the revolution. It's really getting into gear, and it's revolutiony. Okay, so the old regime is finally gone, and the National Assembly and the rest of the Estates General are going to join up, and they are going to create something now known as the Constitutional Assembly, who basically worked from July 1789 through August of 1791, and their first step was to actually revoke any and all privileges of the nobility in France. Okay, and again, the goal is to create some type of Republican-styled government. And that is where we get the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. These are actually, it's wonderful. And basically, this was issued on August 26, 1791. And Lafayette, with an assist from, of course, Thomas Jefferson, who was our ambassador to France, definitely gave some input before he left to come back to the United States of America. And so let's get into some highlights. First of all, liberty and freedom. So we are going to have liberty and property rights for men. Okay, key thing going to be here, men. The government's role is going to be to provide security and protection for people. Again, we formally now get rid of all aristocratic privileges. It is going to end tax exemption pretty much for anybody, and all men are equal, which means all people have equal access to government positions. Positions are based on your talent level. The monarchy will be restricted. There is freedom of speech. All male citizens kind of can vote, and it does outlaw illegal or unjust imprisonment. So that's going to be very, very important to do that, because of course in France that had been going on for quite some time. So that is a good deal. Now, where is its shortcomings at? Well, we still have issues because technically they still have some slave colonies, and that's not really cool. And women get a whole lot of nothing. A woman by the name of Olympe de Gouges, or de Gouges, again, it's a guess. She will create a Declaration for Rights of Women, and that's something we'll get a bit deeper in class. I actually want to spend some time in class on that. So for my just regular YouTube followers, sorry, but let's just say women get shafted, shockingly enough again, and there really are no specific rights that are guaranteed for women. And it's going to be quite a long time before rights are guaranteed for women in any type of way. So, sorry. So what's Louis doing? Well, Louis is hiding out in Versailles because he realized everybody kind of hates him, and that death isn't good. And so initially he refuses to accept this. He will not allow the Constitution to pass. He doesn't want to give up power. And, well, what ends up happening is that while all that is going down, there's a massive food price spike due to poor harvests. And as a result, a bunch of women have had it, and they decide to march on Versailles. It's fantastic. October 5th, 1791, thousands of Parisian women walk to Versailles to confront the king and actually the National Assembly because of rising bread prices. They are going to have cannon and all sorts of crazy stuff. And they actually demand that Louis goes back to Paris to work this out, and Louis is actually put under house arrest in Paris, so he can't go anywhere. And so we get our new Constitution. So what we have here is a basically a constitutional monarchy. Okay. The monarch is very much like an executive. It is hereditary, but it is relatively weak because it will be the job of the legislative assembly to pass laws. It is a 745-man assembly that was voted on through indirect election, which I'll explain how that works in a moment. And their job, and they serve for 2-year terms, and their job was to pass laws and control money. Now, there are a couple different types of citizens here. First and foremost are active citizens. Here are your men. These are men that are over age 25 and they pay a tax that is equivalent to 3 days' labor. Only these people could actually vote. And what they did is they vote for electors. In order to be an elector, you had to pay taxes equivalent to 10 days of paid labor. And there were only about 50,000 of them. And it's from those 50,000 that they chose the deputies that served in the assembly. Okay, so here's the deal. You have active citizens, okay? And there were lots of them. And the active citizens, they paid a certain amount of taxes, and they could only be men, and they had to be 25, and they voted for electors. Those electors then amongst themselves decided who would serve on the legislative assembly. Okay, and to be an actual deputy, you also had to have to pay a silver mark or 54 days' labor worth of taxes. So shockingly enough, the wealthy were in control again. So I guess they tried. Now there are passive citizens. Passive citizens are people that will have all of the rights of like equality and freedom of speech and trial rights and stuff. They just can't vote, and of course this is all, women. Now there are some opposition groups to this. Number one, you have the clergy. They don't really like it because, and the poor don't like it because despite doing all this voting and changing these things, the government wasn't doing anything to slow down food prices, and the clergy didn't like it because they had all their stuff taken from them. Then there's a group called the Jacobins. The Jacobins were basically, these are like your radicals, okay? Some of them go back to, they were the rabble-rousers from the tennis court oath. They want the king out. They want a full republic. Most of them were artisan tradesmen, but academics and stuff like that. And what they do is they set up like these Jacobin clubs all over the nation to basically start to form like resistance and eventually try to like change the government in the future. Okay, but we also have other concerns, like no one knows really what to do with the king. He actually tries to flee the country in 1791, but he gets caught at the border. And then it does seem that he did try to work with the legislative assembly, but a lot of them weren't nobility, even though they were super wealthy, and no one really trusted each other. Okay. And again, they're not effectively collecting taxes, and that's a problem because then they don't have proper income. And then there's going to be war, and there's a theme. A bunch of other monarchs are seeing what's going on in France, and they don't like it, and so they actually end up having a meeting. And in that meeting, what comes out of it is something known in August 27th of 1791, the Declaration of Pillsnitz, which is led by Emperor Leopold II of Austria and King Frederick William of Prussia. And basically they invited monarchs from all over, and they said that the most effectual means to put the King of France in a state to strengthen them in the most perfect liberty, the basis of monarchical government, equally becoming the right of sovereigns and the well-being of the French nation. That's a little kind of like complicated for, we need to make sure that France still has a king because we don't like this whole constitutional stuff that's going on. The French, interestingly enough, they actually are angered about it, and they think that this is almost an act of war, and so as a result, in April of 1792, the French declare war on Austria because Louis's goal here is he thinks that he can unify the people behind him and basically get his power back. Now, unfortunately, early on, they do get hammered, and there begins to have rumors that the Prussians are going to come and invade as well, so that's not good. And so people start to then believe that the kings and nobles are going to actually try to betray the revolution, even though they were kind of working together to begin with, and work with the invaders. And so, as a result, in August of 1792, the Legislative Assembly will arrest Louis, and they'll suspend the monarchy, and they're going to call for new elections, all while they're trying to fight the Austrians. And at this point, we're getting to even just crazier in a time period that we call the Radical Revolution. Then Prussia jumps into a war, and everything's crazy as depicted by that picture on the right. And there's a group of people called the Sans-culottes, who were the working poor and merchants, and they go into straight panic mode. And they again feel that the Prussians are invading not to go against France, but just to kill all the commoners. So what these common people do is they run around and they start arresting nobles and anyone who they think might be involved with these things. I mean, you look at this picture, you've got noblemen hung back here, I've got a head over here, I've got head, blood, like it's absolutely crazy. Everybody is it's just this freak out, and somehow the French army is still fighting all of this. And then what ends up happening is that they're going to create a new constitution. Which all this goes on, they create a new constitution. It's insanity. Okay, so they're going to get rid of the Legislative Assembly, or like fifth version of something here, and now they're going to create something called the National Convention. Okay, so this is made up of lawyers and professionals and property owners. 2/3 of it was under 45 years old, and a lot of them had political experience, so that was good. They officially abolish the monarchy, and they decide they're going to make a republic. And most of the ones in here are Jacobins, but very quickly there's this idea, do we need to have this radical change, or do we need to have a mild change? So what ends up happening is that political parties are going to form. Groups called the Girondins and the Mountains, okay? The Girondins, all right, really didn't like the commoners and saw they were crazy, and they actually kind of wanted to keep the king and really, get a constitution with a weak executive, but they're like, we need to kind of reestablish some type of order to calm the peasants down. The Mountains were mainly based out of Paris, and they basically were the middle class, and they were, they're the radical revolutionaries. And so basically what you end up having is the first thing that they decide to do is that we can't move on until we deal with the king. So that they end up having throughout 1792, they have a debate on what needs to happen with the king, and then finally they put him on actual trial for treason. Now, he was unanimously found guilty by a vote of 693 to nothing, so evidently the National Assembly has 693 members, that's a lot of people, and then it becomes jail or death, okay, and the Girondins win barely with 50%, and on January 21st, 1793, King Louis XVI is executed, and that is the famous painting of them holding up his head. And so now we are finally, the monarchy is completely gone. We need some steps. We've had kind of one constitution, and now we're in another constitution, but everything is still really unsettled, okay? So we'll continue with the third installment of this, but that's it for now.